The magician of electricity. Here we are facing a figure whose fame has spread across the globe, yet there is still much that people do not know about him. He is Thomas Edison. We all know that the destinies of Tesla and Edison crossed when the former immigrated to the United States to work with the latter, and that a special kind of war broke out between them. There is no need to go into the details, for it is well known that in the end the balance tipped in favor of Edison. But it is certain that the world would have looked completely different had Tesla been the one to win. At that time, we might have been getting electricity through unusual means, for example, by a device on the roof of your house resembling a satellite dish. Edison was born in 1847 in Milan, Ohio. Yes, there is another Milan in the United States. He grew up among 7 siblings, and his family later moved to Michigan, where he became independent at the age of 16. He was a model of little formal education, yet vast knowledge. Having received only modest schooling, he educated himself. At a young age, he earned a living by selling newspapers and learned telegraphy from a railroad station employee, eventually becoming skilled enough to work as a telegraph operator. Before long, he introduced his first invention, an electronic voting recorder for elections. Of course, this device had no commercial value and quickly failed. In 1869, he moved to New York. Remember, he was only 22 years old, with a long life still ahead of him. He achieved some success, which enabled him to open a laboratory in a small town called Menlo Park, the place from which Edison would change the course of history. It is fascinating to know today that he filed 1,093 patents. You can check out this astonishing list from the website in the description. Edison went through several phases in his life, starting as an inventor, then becoming an industrial giant and businessman, and eventually turning into a cultural icon symbolizing American genius, until his death in 1931. If you review Edison's list of inventions, you may find it overwhelming, but they largely revolve around 3 major achievements: the phonograph, the electric light bulb, and motion pictures. Edison discovered the phonograph while working on improving the telegraph. The idea came to him to attach a needle to the diaphragm of a telephone and see if the needle could record its vibrations as a message. He made the needle scratch onto an aluminum cylinder, then replayed the cylinder, and was surprised to hear the needle reproduce the phrase "Mary had a little lamb" that he had spoken. Thus, the phonograph was born on August 12, 1877. This invention fascinated Edison so much that he continued working on its development until the very last moments of his life. With this, he became capable of producing a steady, continuous light inside an evacuated glass bulb, a light that lasted for 30 hours without interruption. In short, Edison was the first to create a practical light bulb that could be put to real use. The first successful trial took place in 1879, and by 1882, the first power station began operating in Manhattan. The age of electricity had truly begun, and the Edison General Electric Company was founded. However, the company soon came under the control of investors and bankers, and in 1892, Edison's name was removed, leaving it as General Electric. In 1888, Edison began to take an interest in cinema. He dreamed of a device that would do for the eyes what the phonograph did for the ears, a tool that could record moving images and play them back. This device was called the kinetoscope, a word made up of 2 parts meaning motion viewer. Soon after, Edison developed a film projector called the projectoscope, and the first public film screening in America took place on April 23, 1896. Few people know a strange fact about Edison. The man who brought light and beauty to life was also the legal father of the electric chair used for executions in the United States. Everyone considers Edison a symbol of success and genius, yet there were quite a few moments of failure in his life. He once said, I have not failed 99 times. I have only found 99 ways that do not work. For example, he considered building houses out of concrete. In 1899, he founded the Portland Cement Company, producing everything from concrete, even pianos and phonographs. However, cement was very expensive at the time, and the idea failed. Edison also failed in his attempts to synchronize sound with motion pictures. This process was extremely complex and far from easy, and the technology used today was not his invention. He also failed to find a successful method to separate iron ore from the mines. He spent so much on this idea that he sold his share in General Electric to fund it. Another invention that cannot be classified as either a success or a failure was his attempt to develop a new type of rubber from a plant native to the United States, instead of sourcing it from South American plants. He discovered a type of grass that could yield a substance very similar to rubber, but he died while still immersed in his research, so we never knew whether he was close to success or not. Few people know a strange fact about Edison. The man who brought light and beauty to life was also the legal father of the electric chair used for executions in the United States. The story goes that in 1880, Edison was conducting experiments on methods of transmitting electricity. His electric light bulb had already spread everywhere, but only in New York. He looked with great desire toward the gold mine awaiting him in the rest of the United States. However, direct current, DC, was difficult to transmit over long distances, and each house needed its own generator. This meant that New York would turn into a city of deaf people due to the constant noise. At the same time, a dangerous competitor emerged, George Westinghouse, the great inventor whose name you can find on dozens of household appliances. Westinghouse was considering the use of alternating current, AC, to transmit electricity to homes. This type of current allowed electricity to be sent over several miles and enabled generators to be placed outside cities. Once again, the war of alternating current, AC, versus direct current, DC, flared up between the two genius giants. Edison began warning people about the dangers of AC and instructed his scientists to capture dogs and cats and kill them using alternating current, with the news deliberately reaching the press. In Albany, the governor read these reports and became intrigued. The state had been searching for an easier method of execution than hanging, which was notoriously slow and gruesome, not to mention the possibility of the condemned person's neck being severed. So they contacted Edison to ask about the best and fastest way to kill a human being. It was as if the opportunity had fallen right into his lap, and he eagerly replied, "Of course, with AC generators, especially the ones manufactured by Westinghouse's factories." The first person to have the honor of trying this method was Kemmler, a murderer awaiting execution. In August 1890, they strapped him to the chair and passed alternating current through his body for 17 seconds. He continued struggling and trying to break free, prompting them to send another jolt that made smoke rise from his hair. Some journalists described the scene as horrific, 100 times worse than hanging. But the district attorney was pleased, commenting, "We made history that day." Thus, Kemmler was not merely a murderer being executed, but a pawn in the cruel game between two brilliant giants. Edison had proven that alternating current was a deadly threat to human life, and yet the electric chair remained in use to this day. It was, in a way, though with better intentions, similar to what Dr. Guillotine had done when he invented an innocent machine for harvesting crops, unaware that his name would become forever linked to a horrific execution device that severed countless heads in France. Edison was a strange kind of genius, so much so that the wildest stories about him turn out to be entirely true.